Hello, this is Betsy Waugh, and for the next hour, I'll be reading from the Thursday, June 11th issue of the Democrat Chronicle on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Hochul highlights funds for Rochester. State budget includes Psych Center teardown by Kyria Weaver, Rochester Democrat Chronicle, USA Today Network. Governor Kathy Hochul visited Rochester on June 9th to highlight regional investments included in the state's FY 2027 budget, including funding for public safety, childcare, housing, and driving down costs. One of the items funded in Hochul's 2027 enacted budget that was mentioned is a $300 million investment for the Rochester-Monroe Transformation Initiative. Hochul said she's thrilled to announce this investment in Rochester and the greater Monroe County area, paired with major reforms that will put money back in families' pockets. She spoke from Monroe Community College's downtown campus. Quote, "I am especially proud that the path to universal child care will be forged right here in Monroe County with $20 million to pilot a network of daycares for newborns to 3-year-olds, Hochul said. From universal child care to ratepayer protection to auto insurance reform, we stood up to powerful special interests and got it done," unquote. The funding will go toward revitalizing the High Falls District and will support economic development and revitalization projects in Rochester and surrounding areas. Hochul also celebrated initiatives like the state's one-time $1 billion energy rebate program, which will provide checks of up to $200 to $8.2 million households, and the enactment of her quote-unquote "let them build" agenda, which is intended to help communities build more housing and critical infrastructure. In addition to these investments, Hochul announced $20 million in state funding will go toward advancing the demolition of the Terrence Building, the former home of the Rochester Psychiatric Center. This investment will help move forward a multi-phased, mixed-use redevelopment project that will include more than 500 units. For the city of Rochester, $35 million in additional funding was also secured to support closing budget gaps while minimizing the taxpayer burden and maintaining public safety. This includes $15 million for the Temporary Municipal Assistance Program. The reporter, Kyria Weaver, works as the Government U reporter for the Democrat Chronicle, with a focus on how government actions affect communities and neighborhoods in Rochester and in Monroe County. State police report tests Greece's fresh start. Town leaders face questions over accountability by Kayla Kane, Rochester Democrat Chronicle, USA Today Network. Months before Greece town officials launched an investigation into a cryptic New York State police report and placed the chief of police on administrative leave, a former police sergeant had already warned leaders. He cautioned them about quote-unquote loose ends that could leave the new administration mired in the thorny scandals of Greece's past if it didn't act. One of the lingering issues was the state police report involving now former Deputy Chief Nazar Zanilovic, allegations serious enough that the town later put the chief on leave and launched a municipal investigation. Former Sergeant Brian Root said disturbing accusations against a top Greece police official were seemingly written off without careful examination, contradicting good faith discussions around police reform after 2020. Talking to council members at a January 15th board meeting, Root argued that failing to fully examine the allegations sent the wrong message to younger officers. Quote, "These members are still working, mentoring the junior officers and molding the future of your police department," quote, unquote, he said. Jeff McMahon, the town supervisor, listened quietly from his seat in the middle of the dais at Town Hall. He was new to the role, but not to the people of Greece. McCann had graduated years ago from the town's local paperboy to a faithful public servant with influence at the local, county, and state levels. He had spent the better part of the last year walking Greece neighborhoods and asking residents for their vote and their trust that things could be different in their West Side town. For years, residents had endured tales of chaos and scandal at the hands of people they had chosen to lead. The town had placed GPS trackers on the cars of civilian adversaries, funded personal home renovations with taxpayer dollars, and had nearly allowed a former police chief to escape a drunken driving crash unscathed. Quote, "For too long, Town Hall has been caught up in scandals and not focused on our families," unquote, McCann said in a campaign ad that flashed media headlines of the town's troubles. He promised he would be the one to turn the page and start anew. How his administration handles the allegations within the NYSP report and fallout it could pose for residents may be one of the first true tests of its character. It's still unclear how or when town officials received the NYSP report. Its existence teetered between an open secret and a rumor on community Facebook pages long before that January meeting, but few, if anyone, had a copy of the actual investigation. Former DNC journalist Gary Craig broke the news of the report's contents in a Substack post May 22nd. Greece Police Deputy Chief Nasser Zanilovic had been accused years ago of stalking a former Rochester police colleague and the officer's girlfriend. An NYSP investigation initiated shortly after Zanilovic joined the Greece Police Department in 2022 found evidence of misconduct, but the Monroe County District Attorney's Office declined to prosecute. Hours after Craig's May 22nd post, town officials announced Chief Michael Wood would be placed on administrative leave while they investigate allegations within the report and that Zanilovic had resigned. Town officials have thus far declined to share details of its internal investigation, including exactly how it involves the police chief as it plays out. Freshman Councilmember Spencer Bernard said the sparse information should not be seen as a repeat of past behavior, but rather a sign that officials are taking care to balance a sensitive investigation with public interest. The son of local restaurant owners and Pittsford's chief of staff, Bernard said he ran for town board to stand against the malfeasance he was seeing in his hometown. The state police report presents just one more example of complicated legal matters stunting the town's progress. Quote, "It's important that we do this right and that we get this right so that the public has confidence in what we're doing," unquote, he said in a brief phone call this month. Quote, "That the police department and that our staff has confidence in what we're doing. Some of the issues in the past have led to some morale issues, so I know for me personally that's an important thing. I want to make sure that it doesn't impact the operation of the police department or public safety," unquote. In a news release June 9th, McCann said the town has hired Lori Vahey of Vahey Law Offices and former Assistant U.S. Attorney Richard Resnick to lead the internal investigation, which is expected to take several months. McCann's staff said the town supervisor will not comment on the matter until the review is complete. Local police departments are legally required to report an officer for decertification if they are fired for cause or resign or retire while under investigation for misconduct. A spokesperson for the State Division of Criminal Justice Services, which oversees the decertification process, said the Greece Police Department reported Zanilovic's departure as a quote-unquote standard resignation last month. DCJS said it asked the police agency to review the separation, given recent quote-unquote publicly available information, and, quote, will determine any appropriate action based on the outcome of that review. The NYSP report is entangled in a number of lawsuits by former police officers who say they have been wronged by their superiors. In one lawsuit, former Rochester police investigator Aaron Wilcox alleged supervisors failed to handle his complaints of stalking and harassment by Zanilovic when the pair worked together at Rochester Police Department in 2021. Several months later, Zanilovic was handpicked by Greecetown officials to serve as deputy chief alongside incoming Chief Wood. Wilcox, who lives in Greece, said he tried to report Zanilovic's misconduct to the Greece Police Department and former town supervisor Bill Rylick, but his calls were never returned. He then turned to the New York State Police for help. Zanilovic could not be reached for comment for this story. The report is referenced again in a federal lawsuit by former Greece Police Sergeant Jared Rene, R-E-N-E, who was one of several officers, including Brian Root, who say they were unfairly punished as whistleblowers in the aftermath of the 2021 drunken driving crash of then Police Chief Andrew Forsyth. Renee's attorneys attempted to ask Zanilovic about the NYSP report to challenge his credibility, court records show. When Root approached the town board in January dressed in a sharp suit and carrying a stack of large yellow manila envelopes, he asked for a chance to talk and find a resolution in his own case. In a phone interview this month, the former police sergeant said he mentioned the rumored NYSP report in search of accountability for the remaining members of the Greece Police Department, who he believes are still there to do no good. Quote, "How do we ask for police reform," he asked the board in January, "when this is the way the police are treated when they stand up to corruption or try to do the right thing," unquote. The reporter, Kayla Kane, covers community safety for the Democrat Chronicle with a focus on immigration, police accountability, government surveillance, and how people are impacted by violence. Follow her on Instagram at @ByKaylaKane or get in touch at kkane, that's K-C-A-N-N-E, @Gannett.com. Kuko's wife shares encouraging update after brain tumor surgery. In Marcia Greenwood, Rochester Democrat Chronicle, USA Today Network. John Kuko has cleared a major hurdle on the path to recovery after being diagnosed with a brain tumor 2 weeks ago. On June 8th, the 61-year-old underwent surgery at the University of Rochester Medical Center to remove the mass, which was in an area of the brain that controls speech, and was discovered after he suffered a seizure while driving. Quote, "John did very well during surgery," unquote, his wife, Charlotte Kuko, wrote in a message to the Democrat Chronicle, adding that his neurosurgeon is so pleased with Kuko's progress. Quote, "It'll be a healing journey, but this first part of the process couldn't have gone better," unquote, she wrote. Quote, "We would like to thank his neurosurgeon and the entire team caring for him at URMC Strong. They're all wonderful. We know that John is getting the best care possible. Thank you to everyone for the messages, prayers, and support. We appreciate it so much." Since news of Kuko's health crisis broke, tens of thousands of those messages have flooded the Facebook page of John Kuko Digital, which launched in early 2020 and has amassed 743,000 followers. Kuko's digital photography and video business chronicles the region's natural beauty and frequently features footage of trains crossing the Genesee Arch Bridge above the gorge in Letchworth State Park, one of his favorite destinations. 3 years ago, before pursuing the business full-time, Kuko closed out a legendary career as a sports reporter and sports and news anchor, having worked at Channel 13 from 1989 to 1991 and WROC-TV Channel 8 from 1991 to 2023. A week prior to surgery, he expressed optimism about the road ahead. Quote, "I probably won't be able to drive for a year," he said, "but I've always been blessed. I go out every day, but when I'm taking pictures, I'm not just running from place to place. I don't take for granted the beauty we have. Wherever you go, you have to look and see what you have in front of you," unquote. The reporter Marcia Greenwood primarily covers the grocery business and consumer-focused grocery news, as well as retail development openings and closings. Send story tips to mgreenwood at rochester.gna.com and follow her on X at Marcia Greenwood. You are listening to a reading of articles and features from the Democrat Chronicle on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Sheriff, robbery motive in Parrington killing. 2 more arrests mean 3 suspects now jailed. By Victoria E. Friel, New York Connect Team USA Today Network. Monroe County Sheriff's deputies say a robbery led to the May 27th fatal shooting of a Parrington man, as investigators revealed new details following the arrest of 2 additional suspects in the case. 3 are now charged with murder. Ezra John Nunez, 32, of Parrington, was killed in the shooting, according to the Monroe County Sheriff's Office. Authorities have charged Tyree Ross Simmons, 35, Destiny Cotto, 27, and Jaquez Riley Hill, 20, all of Rochester, with second-degree murder, a felony in connection with Nunez's death. Cotto and Riley Hill also face first-degree robbery charges. Quote, All three individuals arrested in this case played a significant role in the victim's death, said Captain Sean LeClaire of the Sheriff's Office Criminal Investigation Section. We believe robbery was the motive, unquote. Ross Simmons was arrested on the day of the homicide. Cotto and Riley Hill were arrested nearly 2 weeks later. All 3 remain jailed at the Monroe County Jail. LeClaire said investigators collected and analyzed extensive digital, video, and physical evidence from multiple locations and determined that Ross Simmons did not act alone. The investigation also found that at least one person was untruthful in initial statements made to law enforcement, deputies said. Deputies had responded around 1:45 a.m. on May 27th to an apartment at 7323 Pittsford Palmyra Road in Parrington after receiving a report of a deceased man. First responders found Nunez dead inside the apartment from a gunshot wound. Authorities said Nunez lived at the residence where the shooting occurred. According to investigators, the 3 suspects all knew one another but are not related. LeClaire said Nunez did not know all 3 suspects, but he was acquainted with Cotto. Investigators declined to provide additional details about that relationship. LeClaire also said all 3 suspects were well known to law enforcement, but did not elaborate. Deputies said they are not currently seeking additional suspects. However, the investigation remains active, and authorities said any new leads will be pursued. Inflation report shows spiking prices. Electricity prices likely to continue rising. By Rachel Barber and Medora Lee, USA Today. Consumer prices rose again in May, Labor Department data showed, further squeezing Americans' budgets as consumer sentiment sat at record lows. The department's Consumer Price Index, its measure of inflation, saw prices rise 0.5% from April to May. Over the year, they are up 4.2%, in line with forecasters' expectations and representing the steepest increase in 3 years. Core CPC, the Core Consumer Price Index, rose 0.2% over the month and 2.9% over the year. Core CPI measures the rate of price increases, excluding volatile food and energy costs. A rise in core inflation can sometimes signal that higher oil prices are feeding into broader input costs, though the pass-through is usually limited. Economists watch it for signs that energy shocks may be spreading through the economy. It rose 0.2% from April to May, following a 0.4% rise in April and 0.2% increases in March and in February. Electricity prices in April rose 6.1% from the same period a year ago and are expected to continue climbing, further squeezing people's budgets this summer. Quote, families are getting hit from both sides, unquote, said Mark Wolf, Executive Director of the National Energy Assistance Directors Association. Quote, electricity prices continue to rise and hotter summers mean households need to use more electricity simply to stay safe. The result is that Americans are paying substantially more to cool their homes than they were just a few years ago, unquote. Average residential electricity expenditures this summer are expected to increase 10.5%, rising to about $792 monthly in 2026 from $717 last year, according to the NEADA and the Center for Energy, Poverty, and Climate. Elevated inflation has forced some Americans to cut back on spending, but that can only get them so far, economists said. Quote, "The persistent price increases in necessities are the biggest burden on Americans," they said. For middle-income households, the challenge is not only that prices are higher, it's that the most unavoidable expenses like food, gas, and utilities are absorbing more of each pay cut, unquote, said Primerica economist Amy Krukutz. That, quote, "that leaves families with less room to save, pay down debt, or plan for future needs," unquote. Even cooking at home didn't help much, as prices of groceries in May rose 2.7% year over year, the Bureau of Labor Statistics said. That was slower price growth than the 3.5% increase for restaurant food. Quote, "Purchasing power is not just about wages or inflation in isolation. It's about whether income growth is keeping pace with the specific costs families cannot avoid," unquote, she said. Inflation has surged since the start of the Iran war. Before the conflict began, the annual U.S. inflation rate held steady at 2.4% in February. It jumped to 3.3% in March and rose again to 3.8% in April, driven by supply chain disruptions and soaring fuel prices that increased the cost of producing other goods. The U.S. economy faces a different set of challenges than it did just a few months ago, when President Donald Trump nominated Kevin Warsh to lead the Federal Reserve. While inflation remained stable in February, employers shed jobs. Since then, hiring has rebounded with well over 100,000 jobs added in each of the past 3 months. That shift may complicate the case Warsh has made for lowering interest rates and is likely to factor in policymakers' discussion at his first meeting as chair. Federal Reserve policymakers tasked with keeping unemployment low and prices stable face a different set of circumstances than they did late last year. Back then, concerns about a low hire environment in the job market prompted them to cut the Fed's benchmark rate 3 times. On June 10th, after 3 months of strong job gains and rising inflation, forecasters have shifted away from expecting another rate cut this year. Instead, they've begun pricing in the possibility of a rate hike. However, no rate change is expected at the FOMC's meeting next month. Quote, "For the Fed to cut rates, they would likely need to see some new negative shock to the job market, whether that be worsening of the Mideast conflict or some of the potential downside risks to employment from AI being realized," unquote, Comerica Bank chief U.S. economist Bill Adams said. Quote, "If that doesn't happen, the Fed will have a hard time justifying a rate cut in the current environment," unquote. Since the start of the war with Iran, February 28th, regular gas prices have climbed 40% for U.S. consumers as blockades in the Strait of Hormuz limit the global oil supply. In May, gas prices shot up 7%, following a 5.4% rise in April and a 21.2% surge in March. They are up 40.5% over the year. The department's index for energy rose 3.9% in May and accounted for more than 60% of the monthly all items increase. Energy Secretary Chris Wright told CNBC on June 9th that ship traffic through the strait is, quote-unquote, rising very meaningfully. On June 10th, the average price per gallon for regular gasoline was $4.15, down from $4.26 the week prior, and down from $4.52 the month before, according to AAA. Americans have come to expect that prices will only continue to rise over the next year, according to the University of Michigan's survey of consumers. Their year-ahead inflation, expectations ticked up from 4.7% in April to 4.8% in May, a reading much higher than the 3.4% year-ahead inflation rate consumers expected in February before the Iran war began. And as prices climbed in May, the University of Michigan's measure of consumer sentiment sank to 44.8%, the lowest rating since the survey began tracking Americans' feelings about the economy more than 7 decades ago. By that metric, consumer sentiment declined 10% from April to May. It's down 14.2% over the year. At 57%, a majority of those surveyed said high prices, quote, were eroding their personal finances, unquote, according to surveys of Consumers Director Joanne Su, HSU. She added in a statement that lower-income consumers and those without college degrees experience particularly strong drops in sentiment as they are more sensitive to price increases in the cost of gas and essentials. Middle class status in New York depends on where you live, by Madison Scott, New York Connect Team, USA Today Network. Would you be considered middle class in New York? As prices and the cost of living continue to rise, it can be hard to distinguish what it actually means to be middle class and whether it's still attainable in 2026. The expectation of being middle class is often deemed by home ownership, raising kids, having emergency funds, having retirement savings, and being able to splurge on the occasional vacation. Pew Research defines the middle class in practice as making 2/3 to 2 times the median income. However, meeting the mark of being middle class varies by state and its local job market, housing affordability, and infrastructure, among other factors. Smart Asset published a study to determine what it means to be middle class in each state by ranking all of the states and the 100 largest cities in the United States based on the upper bound of the middle class income using data from the 2024 U.S. Census and Pew Research Center studies. Here's what it looks like to be middle class in New York, according to the Smart Asset study. The median middle class household income in New York is $85,820, which ranked in the 15th spot out of the highest median incomes across the country, according to Smart Asset. To be considered middle class in New York, the Smart Asset study states that you would have to make at least $57,213. Any household income above $171,640 would be considered upper class, according to the study. New York's neighboring states, Massachusetts and New Jersey, have the 2 highest median incomes across the country, with Massachusetts' median being $104,828 and New Jersey's being $104,294. The Smart Asset study found that Buffalo, New York is among the 10 cities with the lowest bound on middle-class income, where you would have to make just shy of $35,000 to be considered middle class. Buffalo ranked number 98 out of 100 cities, meaning it has the 3rd lowest income needed to be middle class, with its median household income for the middle class falling at $52,211. To be considered middle class in Buffalo, you'd need to make at least $34,807. Anything above $104,422 would be considered upper class. In New York City, the median household income is $81,228. To be considered middle class in New York City, you need to make at least $54,152. Anything above $162,456 would be considered upper class. It assesses the median household in all 50 states and among the 100 largest U.S. cities. It stated that it then used the Pew Research definition of middle-class households, which indicates the salary range from 2/3 to double the median U.S. salary to help determine the middle-class income range. The reporter, Madison Scott, is a New York Connect reporter covering entertainment, breaking and consumer news, and trending topics with a focus on stories that matter to readers across New York State. She also has an interest in how the system helps or doesn't help families with missing loved ones. She can be reached at mdscott@usatodayco.com. You are listening to a reading of articles and features from the Democrat Chronicle on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. These are obituaries. Barbara J. Sinelli, Cinelli, age 79, in Webster, New York, passed on June 8th. Arrangements are through the Falvo Funeral Home. And Michael L. Ernst, Ernst, age 73, in Seneca Falls, New York, passed on June 7th. Arrangements are through the Sanderson Moore Funeral Home. Service time is June 15th at 11:30 a.m. at the Seneca Falls Country Club. Buffalo Bills open minicamp with focus on Cook. Brady assesses star running back, team injuries, and key position battles. From Orchard Park. The Buffalo Bills can only hope that running back James Cook's absence from all of their off-season program before this week's mandatory minicamp manifests itself as it did in 2025. Last year, the circumstances were a little different, as Cook stayed away from Orchard Park because he was unhappy with his contract, and his agent was trying to hammer out an extension with general manager Brandon Beane. However, he dutifully showed up for the minicamp to avoid being fined, famously saying, quote, "I like my money, that's why I'm here," unquote. And he reported on time to training camp at St. John Fisher University and was ultimately rewarded with a new deal which got plenty of coverage from HBO's Hard Knocks crew. Having banked $28.8 million in guaranteed money, Cook delivered the best of his 4 seasons in Buffalo, as he won the NFL rushing title with 1,621 yards, caught 33 passes for 291 yards, and scored 14 touchdowns, then added another 192 yards from scrimmage and a touchdown in 2 playoff games. While he avoided While he avoided speaking to reporters Tuesday following the first minicamp session, the assumption to be drawn is that the Bills were fine with Cook staying at his off-season home in Florida and working out with his own team of trainers. Quote, "I always want our guys here, and I've been in touch with Jimbo the whole time," head coach Joe Brady said. "You guys saw how James wasn't here last offseason, and you guys remember how he was when he showed up last offseason. He works, and we're in touch with everything down there. I'm always going to want guys here, but it's voluntary. Jimbo has a great work ethic and a great approach, and it was really good to be around him Monday when he arrived. I'm excited for him to get out there again. I know he's excited to be with the guys again," unquote. Here are a few other things Brady covered in his last session with reporters before training camp. Cook's workload could be reduced in 2026. Cook carried a career-high 309 times last year, which surpassed his previous set in 2023 by 72, and his overall touches were at 342, which were 61 more than he had in 2023. What was strange is that in between the 2024 season, he had only 239 total touches, yet he tied for the league in rushing touchdowns with 16. Quote, "I don't think you ever go into each game with the mindset of like, hey, this is how many carries he's going to have. But it does pile up throughout the season, right?" Brady said. Quote, "And it wasn't like he's not taking hits. I know it was asked a lot last season. I would love to be able to get Ray Davis, Ty Johnson, Frank Gore Jr. involved, and I hope those opportunities come up this year. James was just playing at such a high level last year. He was in such a rhythm and a routine that I felt confident in him being able to uphold that. And this year, again, we're looking at everything," unquote. LB Dorian Williams is not practicing. There's a little bit of intrigue surrounding the fourth-year player who's in line to become a full-time starter for the first time since the Bills picked him in the third round of the 2023 draft. Williams suffered a neck injury on the opening kickoff of the play loss in Denver, and that was still lingering when the off-season program began. However, he was not on the field Tuesday, and he was spotted in the weight room using crutches to get around. Brady was a little cryptic when he was asked about Williams, who has not been on the field for a few voluntary sessions where media were allowed to watch. Quote, I'm not going to get into specifics of like when it happened, but yeah, I mean, injuries are going to happen in season or off season, Brady said. Quote, but Dorian's in a great headspace, and I know he's excited for training camp. I think everything's still early, but I mean, right now I feel like he's in a good place, and I anticipate him being there when he gets there, and I anticipate he'll be ready to rock, unquote. The left guard battle will heat up later. Because these practices are not conducted in pads, it's really difficult to gauge what's happening in the trenches at positions where physicality is so important. That's why the competition between Austin Corbett, Alec Anderson, and whoever else the Bills may try at left guard as they seek the replacement for free agent departee David Edwards is sort of on pause until training camp. Quote, I don't ever want to say that this time of year isn't important, and I know they might be, quote unquote, in pajamas right now in the O-line, D-line game, Brady said. Quote, pads come on and different players play differently, but it's important to see the technique and the communication and them working at it. I'm understanding that there is a point in the off season. They're only allowed to be so physical, so it's hard to make some of the judgments. I like the competition that we had up there. We've had a lot of great conversations this past week. There's going to be a lot of opportunities for these guys, and it's up to them to go take it. I hope we show up to camp with an edge and guys wanting to go take these spots. Left guard is just part of that, unquote. Travis Clayton is getting a look on defense. The Bills' 7th round pick in 2024 came through the International Pathway Program, which is why he's been able to stay on the roster the past 2 seasons without fear of being cut. The Bills picked him more than anything out of curiosity, because for a big man, 6'7", 305 pounds, the former English rugby player was such a smooth athlete even if he'd never played football before. After trying to learn the intricacies of the offensive line, the Bills moved him over to the defensive side last week, and that's where he was Tuesday. Quote, he might be the biggest freak of an athlete on our football team, Brady said, quote, and it's a transition, playing offensive tackle and going backwards, and man, the steps that he's made in these last couple of years. And then he also missed the whole 2025 season, right? Sometimes that's forgotten. Quote, you see him move around, you see him do some things, and you see the type of skill sets that we're looking at from a defensive perspective. It's not anything that he was doing wrong on the offensive side of the ball. He was progressing, but it was more of a like, quote, man, I'd love to see what this guy can do going forward, unquote. And he was all about it. He's as explosive as it gets, as athletic as it gets. He's a large human. Excited to see him on the other side of the ball, unquote. The reporter Sal Moriani has covered the Buffalo Bills for more than 4 decades, including 37 years as the full-time beat writer/columnist for the DNC. He's written numerous books about the history of the team, and he's also co-host of the BLEAV, Believe in Bills podcast/YouTube show. He can be reached at maiorana@gannett.com, and you can follow him on X at SALMAIORANA, and on Blue Sky at salmariana.bsky.social. Boys lacrosse. Victor is one step away from another boys lacrosse title chance. By Justin Ritzel, Rochester Democrat Chronicle, USA Today Network. Victor has made state tournament appearances a regular occurrence over the last decade. As Section 5's last standing team, the Blue Devils also bear the weight of continuing the region's state title streak. This season marks the 8th out of a possible 10 state tournament appearances for Victor dating back to 2015. All 7 previous appearances included a trip to the state final. And let's see, that's pretty much, I'm sorry, and that's this article. This Finger Lakes hotel now offers VIP CMAC concert packages by Madison Scott, New York Connect Team USA Today Network. Are you interested in attending a 2026 summer concert at Constellation Brands Marvin Sands Performing Arts Center and need somewhere to stay? The Lake House on Canandaigua's new CMAC package might be your best bet. The Lake House on Canandaigua, a luxury hotel located at 770 South Main Street in Canandaigua, Ontario County, is offering a VIP CMAC experience package this summer that can get you concert tickets and a place to stay all in one purchase. Here's everything you need to know about the hotel's new CMAC concert package. What comes with it? Quote, the main stage VIP CMAC concert package will offer guests this summer's hottest concert tickets along with deluxe accommodations at the Lake House on Canandaigua. The package includes luxurious accommodations, 2 VIP box seat tickets for your CMAC concert of choice, a VIP parking pass or VIP shuttle to and from the concert, and breakfast for 2 at the Lake House's Rose Tavern. The price is not listed on the site and probably varies depending on the show. The Lake House on Canandaigua said that those interested in purchasing the package should fill out the form on the website, and then a team member will contact you back. To find the form, visit lakehousecanandaigua.com. So who is coming to CMAC in 2020? Quite a few people. I'll read them quickly. Teddy Swims, June 5th. Darius Rucker, June 6th. Bleachers, June 20th. Chicago, June 26th. Jack Johnson, July 1st. The Rochester Philharmonic Orchestra with its Red, White, and Boom concert on July 2nd. Dierks Bentley on July 11th. Death Cab for Cutie on July 18th. CAAMP, July 21st. Alison Krauss in Union Station, July 25th. Ella Langley, July 31st. Zach Top, August 8th. Blues Traveler and Gin Blossoms, co-headlining on August 9th. Josh Groban, August 18th. Brandi Carlile, August 20th. Sublime, August 22nd. Luke Bryan will perform his Word on the Street tour on August 26th. The Jerry Garcia Symphonic Celebration on September 1st. John Fogerty and Steve Winwood on September 5th. For more information on performers and tickets, visit cmacevents.com. The reporter Madison Scott is a New York Connect reporter covering entertainment, breaking and consumer news, and trending topics with a focus on stories that matter to readers across New York State. She also has an interest in how the system helps or doesn't help families with missing loved ones. She can be reached at mdscott@ustodayco.com. ICE crackdown looming in New York City, Border Czar says, by Melina Khan and Eduardo Cuevas, USA Today. Tom Homan, the White House's border czar, warned that he's deploying more immigration and customs enforcement agents to New York after the state's latest sweeping legislation limiting the agency's actions. In a June 8th interview on Fox and Friends, Homan said he's planning to send, quote, more ICE agents than you've ever seen in New York City, unquote, after New York Governor Kathy Hochul in late May signed legislation enacting protections against ICE enforcement actions. As part of her fiscal year 2027 budget, Hochul approved laws that, in part, bar federal officers from using state and local law enforcement facilities for civil immigration actions. Homan said when he and Hochul met a few months ago, they discussed allowing federal officers to make arrests at local jails. Quote, she signed the legislation anyway, So I made her a promise. You will see more ICE agents than you've ever seen in New York City, and it's coming, unquote, he said. Homan also said he has, quote, reviewed an operational plan, unquote, for an ICE surge in New York, but did not specify when it would take place. USA Today has reached out to New York City Hall, ICE, and the Department of Homeland Security for comment. On June 8th, Hochul said Homan was going in a different direction than President Donald Trump. She said Trump promised not to send federal immigration agents to New York unless she asked. Quote, I'm not asking now. That'll never happen, she told reporters, because they saw what happened in Minneapolis. They saw the chaos and literally the murder of 2 innocent civilians who are simply exercising their right to protest. They know what could happen. They know the possibilities. I want to make sure we keep the city safe, unquote. You are listening to a reading of articles and features from the Democrat Chronicle on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Con Ed keeps ratepayers in dark about New York debt collection probe. AARP joins others who question confidentiality. By Thomas C. Zambito, New York State Team, USA Today Network. Con Edison is trying to sidestep questions about its debt collection practices by asserting the information is confidential, New York State's leading ratepayer advocacy organizations claim. The AARP joined the Public Utility Law Project in calling out the state's largest utility for refusing to publicly reveal its strategy for going after ratepayers behind on gas and electric bills. Con Edison recently said it wanted the information it agreed to share with state regulators investigating utility debt collection practices to remain under wraps. Bill Ferris, the AARP's New York legislative representative, said Con Edison's refusal is an affront to ratepayers who deserve, quote, an open and transparent process, unquote. Quote, now we have the state's largest utility, which actually terminated about 22,000 households in the month of April for lack of payment, deciding that they don't want to put their answers on the website because it was in part confidential commercial information. But other large utilities found a way to answer all the questions, unquote, Ferris said. A spokesman for Con Edison declined to comment, pointing to letters Con Edison attorneys sent to the Public Service Commission in recent weeks. Quote, Con Edison requests that the department notify the company in advance of any determination to disclose any portion of these materials so that the company may pursue any available remedies, unquote, a Con Edison attorney wrote in a May 19th letter to the PSC. Con Edison has nearly 5 million gas and customers in Westchester County and New York City. Hochul, the governor, called for the PSC probe after Newsday and the New York Times revealed that during a utility collections conference in Miami earlier this year, one executive, during a discussion of service shutoffs, joked that, quote, people think much better in the dark, unquote. On May 18th, Rory Christian, the PSC chairman and CEO, sent a list of 8 questions to state utilities to determine whether the executive comments represented, quote, a deeper corporate culture issue that risks normalizing indifference toward the very customers and communities utilities are obligated to serve, unquote. Quote, let me be clear, there's nothing humorous about a household losing essential utility service, Christian said. For many New Yorkers, a shutoff is not an abstract enforcement tool. It's a moment of real hardship with consequences for health, safety, and dignity, unquote. Hochul said she expected PSEG.LI, which employed the executive who made the offhand remark, to take, quote, swift and decisive action. Shutoffs over debt collection should be viewed as a last resort, not something to joke, threaten, or brag about, unquote, Hochul said. What was Central Hudson's response? In April, some 460,000 New Yorkers received final shutoff notices for non-payment, state records show, and over 1 million New Yorkers were behind at least 3 months on gas and electric bills with $2 billion owed. A February survey by the AARP said the state's energy affordability crisis has deepened, forcing many older New Yorkers to choose between paying utility bills or buying household necessities. PSEG-LI answered all 8 questions about their collection strategy, as did NYSEG, which has about 1 million gas and electric customers upstate. Central Hudson, with 400,000 gas and electric companies in the Hudson Valley, also declined to answer questions in a public forum, saying their collection strategy could be considered a trade secret. The company's concerns included that by submitting a vast amount of information to the PSC, employee names as well as the names of third-party contractors could be divulged. Quote, the rising cost of living in the Hudson Valley remains a top concern for many residents, and we are committed to working with our customers to help keep their Central Hudson accounts in good standing, unquote, the company said in a statement. Quote, we adhere closely to the Public Service Commission's Home Energy Fair Practices Act across every aspect of our collections process, ensuring fairness and transparency, unquote. The company added that it participates in several energy assistance programs for ratepayers. No one from Central Hudson attended the Miami conference. Ferris dismissed the utility's decision to invoke a legal strategy to get around providing answers. Quote, we need to figure out if this was one rogue employee with a downstate utility, or is this a symptom of something else, Ferris said. That type of language and the arrogance and disregard at the Miami conference should never happen in the state of New York, unquote. The reporter Thomas C. Zambito covers energy, transportation, and economic growth for the U.S. Today Network's New York State team. He's won dozens of state and national writing awards from the Associated Press, Investigative Reporters and Editors, the Deadline Club, and others during a decades-long career that's included stops at the New York Daily News, the Star Ledger of Newark, and the Record of Hackensack. He can be reached at tzambito@lohud.com. FDA okays new ingredient for sunscreen by Mary Walworth Holdridge and Michelle Del Rey, USA Today. The Food and Drug Administration announced June 9th that it had approved bemotrizinol, it's spelled BEMOTRIZINOL, for use in sunscreens in the United States, marking the first new sunscreen ingredient introduced since the 1990s. The chemical is already popular in other countries. Quote, bemotrizinol has been used safely in Europe for decades, and the FDA's action will increase competition and consumer confidence in sunscreen products, unquote, Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. said in a news release. The agency first announced plans to review bemotrizinol for use in sunblock in December of 2025, with then FDA Commissioner Marty Makary saying that the FDA has, quote, historically moved too slowly in this area, leaving Americans with fewer options than consumers abroad. The American Academy of Dermatology cheered the decision. Quote, the FDA announcement follows long-standing and ongoing advocacy by the American Academy of Dermatology Association, unquote. Dr. Murad Alam, A-L-A-M, the Academy's president, said in a statement. Quote, the AADA, or American Academy of Dermatology, believes this approval marks an important public health step by expanding access to safe and effective sunscreens for consumers in the United States and helping save the lives of Americans from skin cancer, one of the most preventable cancers, unquote. Bemotrizinol, or uppercase BEMT, is a chemical compound that is broad spectrum, meaning it protects against both UVA and UVB rays. About 95% of the ultraviolet radiation that reaches the ground is UVA, with UVB making up the additional 5%, according to the Anderson Cancer Center. Tanning and burns happen faster with UVA than UVB, which can be filtered by barriers like windows and clouds. Sunscreen can protect against both types of ultraviolet radiation in two different ways: by putting a physical barrier between the skin and the sun with minerals, or by using a chemical that absorbs rays before they can reach the skin. BEMT is one of the latter, so it uses a chemical that absorbs rays before they reach the skin. Along with being broad-spectrum, bemotrizinol offers a higher SPF in smaller amounts than other popular ingredients, according to the FDA. It's more photostable than other common sunscreen ingredients, meaning it breaks down in the sun more slowly, said Dr. Nisha Veradarajan, a dermatologist at the Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center. It's oil-soluble, which makes it ideal for incorporating into creams. And it's unlikely to cause skin irritation, which the FDA says makes it suitable for use on children as young as 6 months of age. In fact, bemotrizinol is the first of its kind in being recommended for very young children. Sunscreen manufacturers may include bemotrizinol as an active ingredient in U.S. sunscreens beginning August 9th this year. Bemotrizinol sunscreen will first be sold in the United States under the brand name Parcel Shield by the Dutch manufacturer DSM Nutritional Products and is expected to be available later this year. After an 18-month exclusive period, other manufacturers will be allowed to follow. You have been listening to a reading of articles and features from the Thursday, June 11th issue of the Democrat Chronicle. Your reader has been Betsy Waugh. Thank you for listening.